Hello, everybody. My name is Vickie De Beer. I'm a chef and food writer and the writer of the Type 1 and Type 2 Diabetic Cookbook. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of meal prep in a healthy family's diet. Meal prep is one of the best tools you have to ensure that your family eats wholesome, home-cooked meals all the time. And the reasoning behind that is because if we start to take a lot of takeaways, go out in restaurants, and eat a lot of food from supermarkets that's being pre-prepared, we don't know what goes in that food. And it is definitely harmful because these foods are highly processed. They want to save money with producing this food. So it contains a lot of starches, a lot of sugars, a lot of seed oils. And we know that all of these things are drivers of chronic inflammation in our family's bodies. So by cooking yourself, you're already making a big decision towards a healthy family. So why is it important to do some planning? Okay, so planning, it's always a good idea to be prepared. We know this in life in general. So if you plan your family's meals in advance, you have the ingredients in your home, it is not so easy to fall back on processed foods and takeaways. So the first step that you have to do is you're going to have to see what do you have in your kitchen cupboards, what do you have in the fridge, and what do you have in the freezer. This is a good start so that you don't buy everything double. And the most important thing is actually to remove all the harmful foods. Okay, so this is quite a big step towards a healthy family, is if you don't have the unhealthy foods on the shelves in the fridge, it won't call to you. We all know that highly processed and ultra processed foods are highly addictive. It's been proven over and over. Some studies even compare it to hard drugs like heroin. So why would you keep it in your cupboards? We don't keep hard drugs in the cupboards. You know, if there is a box of sweets or a pack of biscuits in your cupboard, it will call to you and your kids and everybody will eat it. So I found the best way is just not have it in the house. I'm not saying that you should never have treats in the house, but the best way is that there shouldn't be treats all the time. It's a complete lie and fallacy that says that children need harmful snacks to be healthy. You know, people always say, yes, but children won't have a quality of life if they don't have access to these things. It's nonsense. The human body do not need these things. And it's actually just, like we said, a driver of inflammation. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to take an inventory list and you're going to do some planning. You're going to take your 5 days of the week and you're going to take 5 meals that you can cook and make a shopping list for that. Look what you have. So all the things that must come to the front of your cupboard, that's so that you use it first, and newer products must go to the back. Okay, so it's literally like a stock taking in a store. Once you have your shopping list, you can go shopping. Okay, so shopping is a big part of this whole meal prep thing, but also about healthy eating. As I said, the best thing is not to include unhealthy foods. We always just stay on the perimeter of the supermarket. You go to your fresh fruit and veg, buy your vegetables for the week. You go to the meat options and the dairy options, maybe some tin products, maybe some good olive oils and fats to cook with, and that's it. We don't go into any aisles containing juices, fruit juices, or cereals, or biscuits or cookies or chips. We just don't go into those aisles. It's not necessary. It's not nutritionally dense. In fact, all of those foods contain high amounts of sugar, high amounts of refined carbohydrates, and high amounts of seed oils. That's all harmful to the body. Okay, so then let's talk a bit about looking at labels in the supermarket. It is so important to start reading labels because marketers and food marketers are so clever. They will put a big sticker on it that says high protein or diabetic friendly or sugar free. But when you read the product, you will really see what's going on there. So what are we looking for? What's the harmful things that we don't want to buy? Number one We don't want to buy anything with a seed oil in it. I'm talking about canola oil, sunflower oil, sesame oil, soya oil, all these things. We don't want to buy any food with these oils in. These oils are highly inflammatory. The process that they make it is very carcinogenic. So we avoid all those foods containing canola oil. And you know what? Most foods contain canola oil. It's a cheap, cheap oil that can bulk up things like mayonnaise, sauces, biscuits, cookies. They fry chips in it. So that gives you a good indication of why we ignore those foods. So the main thing is to look for canola oils and for other seed oils. Then anything with E numbers, okay? E numbers means it's highly processed. Now, not all E numbers are harmful. Some E numbers are just basic flavorants, that's natural, or thickeners. But if you see a product with, if it's like something like bread and it contains 17 E numbers, you know that that product is completely unnatural. And many of those E numbers are very harmful. So any unnatural colorants, flavorants, thickeners, stabilizers, these things are harmful. Many foods contain cellulose. Cellulose is actually just wood pulp. Wood pulp, they're putting wood pulp in the food. So just watch out for things that they add additives. Lots of spices and premixes and things like that. They bulk it up with things like cellulose, which is absolutely contains no nutritional value. And really, it's not that it's extremely harmful, but it's unnecessary. Why would you give your children wood pulp to eat? So look for real foods containing real ingredients, shorter ingredient lists. The moment it becomes too long, you know this is an ultra-processed food. And it's the ultra-processed foods that's really harmful to us. So how do you actually go about doing meal prep? You've done your shopping now, you have your ingredients, but how is it practically implementing this into your life? So the main thing that you must understand is not everything needs to be frozen in your freezer. In fact, I realized very soon that to have little bits of individual portions of food in the freezer wasn't really successful for us as a family. Those meals just stayed in the freezer. Nobody wanted to go to the trouble of defrosting an individual meal and eating it on their own. So for me, it is important to do some pre-prep that actually makes my life easier as being the main cook in the family and the main planner. So what I do is that on a Saturday morning, I will do my shopping list and see what I have left in the freezer. Then I will go and do my shopping. And then on a Sunday afternoon or in the morning, I have some extra time. So those mornings, I will just cook some things that I know will help me in the week. I will cook a big pot of bone broth that we will keep in the fridge actually for the week, for everybody to just take a mug in the morning. And, you know, my children actually eat bone broth for breakfast. It's one of the most satisfying, wonderful, energy-giving foods that you can do for your family. And I know in summer we don't feel like eating soup maybe, but just a mug of bone broth is really nourishing and very, very, very delicious. So I make a big pot of bone broth. I make a big pot of bolognese, and that goes, half of the bolognese goes into the freezer and the other half just goes into the fridge. So this is a way that your mind can work, that you can understand that some things you just prepare maybe to eat in a day or two. Other things you prepare to keep in the freezer for days that you really don't have any other plans. Then I basically do some batch cooking. We have a little bit more time on a Saturday. So I will do a roast chicken, but instead of only doing one, I will do 2 roast chickens so that I have 1 roast chicken in the fridge. These days, I don't have any more chicken in the fridge because I have very big boys and they finish both the chickens. So now I have to start doing 3 chickens. I draw the line at that. But basically, in principle, I always had an extra chicken in the fridge. And that helped me so much with lunch boxes and just a snack in the fridge. So you must think of things that will assist you during the week. Sometimes it is doing a whole meal and freezing it as a backup. Other times it's having something extra and some leftovers for the next day. Other times you can just, when you have a little bit of extra time, do some pre-prep. You know, chefs talk about mise en place. That is to put everything in place. And that's where I've really learned to use my chefing skills. You don't have to freeze everything or freeze whole meals. Sometimes, if you have a bit of extra time, it will help you just to prepare a nice flavor base. Now, the French call it mirepoix and the Italians call it sofrito. And this is the basic flavor base that all soups and stews and dishes start with. And it's just basically frying some onions, some celery, some carrots with some garlic and adding some bay leaves and thyme. If you have that in little Ziploc bags in the freezer, that's a good start for a flavorful meal or soup. And it has helped me so much. You think, oh, how much time can that take up? But to start a meal at 5 or at 6 in the afternoon and you already have your flavor base really has helped me a lot to cook it quickly. The important thing is that having a flavorful tomato sauce or a mushroom sauce or something like that in the freezer makes it so much easier for you to cook at home. So you have from Sunday, you have a little bit of leftover chicken, you have some flavor base in the freezer, and you might have a flavorful tomato sauce that you created from scratch, and that's not from a bottle with numbers and starches in there. And that can be made in a very quick nice, lovely Provençal chicken dish, something like that. So think of the building blocks of your meals. You don't have to stand and cook for a whole day on a Saturday and cook 7 meals to have in the freezer. I think that's why meal prep becomes so daunting for people. They think they have to cook for hours and have all these little bowls in the freezer. And that's not how it is. It's a mindset of making life easier for you and cooking from scratch. I always say start by chopping an onion. That's where cooking starts. And that's where your health for your family starts. If you put onion and garlic and natural herbs in your food, you don't have to put thickeners and soup powders and cook in sauces from the store in your food. For me, it is such a passionate thing that for especially South Africans love to cook with pre-made soup powders and little soup mixtures. And I don't understand that because there's absolutely nothing natural in those soup powders. It's just thickeners. It's just things like cellulose to be a bulking agent, and then it's flavorings. It's numbers. There's nothing natural in that. So you cook a meal for your family, and then you add a whole bunch of unnatural products in there. So you don't need it. You really don't need it. You can start with an onion and garlic and maybe some fresh ginger, and that is enough flavor and natural salt. Just season your food with salt, maybe a little bit of spices, and that's enough. So do your planning to cook from scratch, and maybe it's just a flavor base that you cook, maybe it's just a sauce, maybe it's you that's just doing a batch cooking session, doubling up on your bolognese, doubling up on your curry, or doubling up on your bobotie, and just having the rest in the freezer for the other day. So I really plan my cooking in this way. If I'm doing a bobotie on Monday, I will make a big pan of bobotie, and the rest I will put away. And then by Wednesday, I will make a low-carb pie with the bobotie. I make a low-carb pastry quickly. It's very quick, and I cover it with the low-carb pastry, and we have that with a salad. So you can plan your meal prep throughout the week. Then I have some backup. I told you that there's some things I just put in the freezer, finished meals, because life happens. And that's the thing. When we don't prepare for those busy evenings, or those evenings, especially on Thursdays, I find that I'm so tired after the week. That's when we tend to fall back on takeaways and running into a store and buying a ready-made meal. So that's when I have my one ready-made meal, complete meal, frozen in the freezer. And you understand your week, and you understand your lifestyle, and when you feel up to making things or not. And you must take a real look at that and say, I know that Mondays are really hectic for me. I know Wednesdays I get at home only at 8 o'clock because I have a late shift, or whatever your unique lifestyle is. And do your planning according to that. Be like brutally honest with yourself. I think we try to be a bit think better of ourselves, but really go and try to be brutally honest and say, when do I fail the most? When do I really fall back on unhealthy foods? And try to address that in your lifestyle with doing some meal prep and some meal planning. So when you start doing meal prep, there's a few very important safety precautions that you must take and healthy food that you must just keep in mind. Okay. So when you cook something bulk like a boertie or a big pot of bolognese and things like that, it's important to always remember that you must just cool it down completely and then divide it into bowls that with good, sealing lids, and then mark it right on it. Bobotie, made on the 6th of March, 2024. Okay. And then place it in the freezer. I know that you think I will remember that that was Bobotie, but once it's frozen and it's white all around, you will not remember what's in that bowl or what in that container. So the thing that I first did when I started doing that meal prep was to just go and look for proper containers. So I prefer glass containers. I think it's safer for the family to store food for a long time in glass, not in plastic. And then also for the reheating, I find that glass is really good because I can go from freezer to defrosting and then put it straight into the oven for reheating. So glass is a bit of an investment. I started by buying a big glass bowl with a lid every month until I had enough because it is expensive. But you can also use Ziploc bags, zip seal bags, and there's different soup zip seal bags and shapes and sizes that you can find on the internet, which I find can take a lot less space in the fridge. If you put something like a bolognese, a nice flavored mince in a freezing bag, and you flatten it, you can stack them very nicely in the freezer. Remember to put the name on, remember to put the date on. So there's not really a date where the food will become harmful to you as long as it stays in the freezer. It's just that you have a loss of flavor. The longer meat and cooked dishes are in the freezer, the more flavor you lose. So if you keep a bowl of bobotie in the freezer for a year, by that time there's not going to be a lot of flavor there, but the meat will not go off. It will not be harmful to you. Okay, so I think people are very paranoid of saying, yes, but fish should only be frozen for 3 months and beef can be frozen for 6 months. There's rules like that. And that is really not because it becomes harmful, but you lose a lot of texture, you lose a lot of moisture, and with that, you lose a lot of flavor and taste. Okay, so that's why they have the limitations. That is if it's not load shedding and the freezer doesn't go off. So just be careful to keep it always completely frozen hard. Okay, if something starts defrosting, rather defrost it, heat it, and use it. Don't refreeze meat. Okay, so you should never, once you've cooked food and you have frozen it, you should never defrost it. And then if you don't eat it, refreeze it again. That can cause harmful bacteria to grow into the meat, and that can really make you sick. So rather not ever do that. Just frozen once, defrost, heat, and eat. And then after that, rather discard if you don't finish it. Okay, so these are a few things that you should keep in mind. It's finding good quality containers for your meal prep, things that will fit into your freezer. If you cannot fit big glass bowls in your freezer, then go and look at things like Ziploc bags and soup bags and things like that you can flatten and stack very nicely. Another thing that works really well is what I call food blocks. So what you do is you make your soup. It works very well with tomato, like a flavorful tomato sauce or a mushroom cooking sauce that I can make, or something like a bone broth. Is you freeze it in the container, but then after a day, after it has frozen really rock hard, you just take it out of the container. It literally pops out. If it stands outside for a few seconds, you can just pop it out, and then you wrap that very, very well in plastic wrap, and then you freeze your food blocks. So you free up your containers, because if you really cook a lot or you have like a real drive to do some meal prep, you really run out of containers at some stage. So I create these food blocks of frozen food, and they go into the freezer just like that. And what I found is very easy to just take it out, pop it into a pot, and slowly on a very low temperature, let it defrost. Okay. So one of the things that you must remember when you start doing meal prep is that you must in time really take the time to defrost your food. It's awful to come home. Now you have this wonderful freezing food, your freezer food in the freezer, but you forgot to take it out the night before. And if it's a solid piece of food, it's going to take really long to defrost. So I have a little blackboard sticker on my freezer where I just remind myself Monday, remember, remove the frozen bobotie. And before I go to work in the morning, I take it out and it defrosts at room temperature on the kitchen counter in a tray, because there will always be some moisture around the bowl from the defrosting of the ice and the frost, so that when I get home tonight, that I have my freezer meal already defrosted. So there's a few practical things that you must start doing. You must keep a list on your freezer of the foods you have in the freezer. Otherwise, we don't utilize it. We forget what we have. Then remind yourself to defrost it in a natural way, because that is the best for food safety, is to defrost something in the fridge, maybe overnight, or if it's a really warm day and summer, you should put it rather in the fridge to defrost over, in the course of a day. And then just take a stock take. What do I have left for the next week, so that you don't prepare everything over and over again. So for me, it's important to realize that meal prep is actually a lot of meal planning, and planning your shopping list and planning your meals and keeping your freezer up to date with your stock taking. So as I said earlier, you can freeze absolutely everything. You can even freeze eggs. There's really nothing that you can't freeze. It's just that you don't want to freeze everything. I find that things with starchy vegetables and creamy sauces don't freeze very well, because once you defrost them, the texture changes. But it doesn't mean that you cannot do it. So it depends on your own taste, preferences. So when you buy bulk and when you buy large amounts of meat and food like that, you obviously save a lot of time and a lot of money. But it is, I find, much better to cook the food, and especially vegetables, before freezing it, or just before keeping it just in the fridge until it goes off. So to just quickly blanch vegetables like pumpkin pieces, cauliflower, broccoli, all the low-carb fibrous vegetables that we love to eat. It's a very, very quick process. You can also steam it. What I create is I create a little double boiler over a very large saucepan with a little bit of water, and I put just a colander over it. I have a metal colander, and I don't freeze, I steam the different vegetables very quickly, just until I see they change color. Like broccoli, you can see it becomes a dark green. Cauliflower, you start to smell that it's cooked. So when you still put something like a fork in it, you can still feel that there's resistance. It didn't cook until it's too soft. Then I just scatter it over a big oven pan or a big baking tray to cool down completely. Remember, it's important to cool food down completely before freezing it. And the reasoning behind that is that if you put warm food in the freezer, there might be some bacteria that grow on the food, but also it will bring down the temperature of the rest of the freezer, and then the rest of the food can go off. So it's important to just cool the food down completely, and then I start packaging it. And I make Ziploc bags with just steamed broccoli, or a combination of broccoli and cauliflower, or some steamed low carb other vegetables, and I just mark them. Remember to put a name on and put your date on. And then I also stack them in the freezer next to my pre-prepared bolognese, next to my blocks of bone broth, next to my blocks of basic stews and my flavor bases. And with that, you can really carry on for about 2 weeks. And just pop out the vegetables in the evening. They defrost very quickly in a pan. You don't even have to take them out beforehand. And what I do is just in a pan with some butter, and I just toss them quickly with some salt on, and you have a side dish. Really, you don't need anything else. What I also did with the kids when they were little, we would have little tiny Ziplocs with a little bit of frozen berries in, and that would just be in the fridge. And I could very quickly make them a little smoothie in the mornings by buzzing the berries with some yogurt. And it worked really well, especially in summer, because it's almost like a little frozen yogurt. So you can really get very clever with the things that you want to pre-prepare. And as I said, almost anything can be frozen. But for example, going back to the eggs that I said can be frozen, I find it a very useful tip to boil a lot of eggs, say on a Monday afternoon. I just put a big pot of water on and I boil the eggs up for 4 minutes. We like soft boiled eggs, or you can go up to 7 minutes for a bit more. If you like a hard boiled egg, you can go for 8 minutes. Drain it under cold running water, and then I peel them and keep it in a bowl with a lid in the fridge. And you know what? That is such a great snack. If you really start craving something, or you feel your energy levels dropping in the afternoon, your afternoon slump that we sometimes get, just to grab a boiled egg, half it, put some salt on it, and eat it is really such a good way to get your energy up without eating sugar, without eating a carbohydrate. So you get clever with the things that you have in the freezer to snack on also. So don't just think of main meals. And I don't propagate snacking. I don't think snacking is a good idea. But sometimes you just really need something to lift your energy levels. So there's other things that you can create. And the thing with frozen food is, as I said, the longer it's frozen, the less flavor you have. So if you cook from scratch and you start your meals with chopped onions, some grated ginger, some chopped garlic, maybe some leeks, all of these are great prebiotics. That's good for your gut health also. That's a good way to start your meals for your family. And then add natural herbs. You don't need packets. You don't need packets of soup powders and flavorings. Really, those things are harmful to your family. It doesn't contribute anything to the nutritional value of your food. And by adding things like bay leaves and thyme, you actually add a lot of flavor so that it lasts longer in the freezer, and you're actually adding more nutrition for your family. I cook a lot with things like anchovies. Anchovies is a wonderful flavoring for things like pasta sauces to start a good stew and things like that. You know, it's not something that gives a fishy flavor, but it gives a beautiful umami saltiness to food. It dissolves completely. When you cook your onion, you cook the anchovies, and it's good for you. It contains high amounts of omega-3 fatty acids, which we really need. So you can build the flavor in your food with nutritionally dense ingredients instead of adding over-processed starches and thickeners to your food. I enjoy to cook with things like mustard, you know, to make a sauce with a good tablespoon of mustard. It gives so much flavor and things like that. And it's completely natural. Mustard do not contain any seed oils. Other sauces, you must read the back of the label, because they may contain things like pre-produced sweet chili sauces, sriracha sauces, and things like that. All those sauces, in the old days, they were made naturally with natural fermentation, things like soya sauce. But now these things are hyper processed. So there's no natural ingredients anymore in those things. So try to limit your use of condiment sauces in your cooking, especially chutneys and things like that, because I know South Africans love eating sweet foods, but it's high sugar. It's really high sugar. So what you are doing by cooking with these high sugar ingredients is you are just basically enhancing the sugar content in your food. And it's really not necessary. We don't need sugar in our food. Okay, so use natural flavorings, natural garlic, natural onion, herbs and things, rather to flavor your food, and especially when you're going to freeze the food so that the flavor lasts longer. I hope these tips will help you to plan your meal prep and your meal planning, and to make life a little bit easier for you. And just realize that this is one of the biggest things that you can do for your family's health.